And joining Vijay, we have Captain Sethu Raman, SVP and Chief Risk Officer, Mphasis. Ladies and gentlemen, please do clap. I hope they will get better claps after the session. Subramanian, Director, Colruyt IT Consultancy India Private Limited. And Sai Sundaram, Executive Director, Group Sourcing, UBS. Over to you, gentlemen.
Good morning, and I hope all of you had a nice coffee break. And before I just jump into this presentation, someone talked about dial-up adapters a little earlier today. I thought I'd go 10 years back before that as well. I don't know how many of you remember Doordarshan and how it used to begin. But how many of you are really into cyber security, IT audit, IT product selling space in this room? Just show of hands. Oh, good. 70–80% of us. Very nice. I can predict, and I can make one prediction personally, that most of us will be in this room for years to come. Our jobs are not at risk. And I would like to show you why as I go along in the presentation, but I'd also like to give some insights into what I believe are some of the newer skills we should pick up as time progresses. So this is a very, very vast subject. And I hope, and I have spoken to all my fellow panelists, each one has a very, very nice and different insight into this subject. So I'll not spend so much time doing the presentation, but we'll get into the fireside chat as soon as possible. But I thought I'll begin with, and I promise this is the only KPMG slide that I will show. We do a CEO survey every year. And this year's CEO survey just came 10 days back. And there were 11 key findings which came out of that CEO survey. And this survey doesn't cover only technology aspects. It covers aspects pertaining to business strategy, geopolitical risks, and all of those matters. But there were 5 out of 11 findings, which I thought were relevant to this group. So the first one is that 65% or 2/3 of the CEOs believe that disruption is an opportunity, it's not a threat to their business. And 3 in 4 believe that they are the disruptor in the industry. And disruption doesn't happen today without technology. The technology is here to stay. The second one, which is very interesting, is on cyber resilience itself. And the word cyber resilience is in the key finding. I have not changed a single word just because I had to come into this conference. They believe that cyber resilience is improved. And the survey was done just before WannaCry. Right? Last year when we did this survey, in 2016, cyber was the #1 concern for their business. Today it slipped to #5, but it's still right there as a business risk to the organization, not just a technology risk. But mark this, the next statistic that I'll say, because I'll come back to this later in my presentation, 42% of the CEOs believe that their organizations are fully prepared. And this is a global survey. On other matters, they all believe that intuition and analytics is here to stay. Again, roughly 2/3 believe that they know how to sense their markets, and they have built DA platforms around that. But more than half are concerned about the quality of data which gets into it. So while they can sense it well, but they only sense it half well enough, right? They also believe that trust is going to diminish. It will either remain same, trust between organizations because of the changing nature of the world, or it is going to deteriorate. But at the same time, 3/4 of them, for their own organization, believe more and more in inculcating values, building culture, building trust, rather than look at technology to solve problems. And the final one is one out of the top 3 risks organizations face is reputation. It's in the global top 3. Out of total 16 risks that we talked about. And in the next 3 years, this will have the second biggest impact on growth for all global organizations, lack of reputation. What happens if something happens to them from a cyber perspective, the reputation is lost, growth gets hampered. What I'll try and do very quickly before we get into the panel is bring up some thoughts that I have of trying to link the world of science fiction and bring it back to cyber resilience. And in doing so, I will pass through three phases. One is from fiction, future fiction, into very technical concepts, but how does that relate back to the board? So let's start with an architectural construct of cybersecurity. This was Robocop. This movie came out 25, 30 years back, and the Robocop had 4 prime directives. This was a cop, obviously, a robo designed to be a cop. And the principles that it lived by was it had to serve the public trust, which every law enforcement agency has to do. It has to protect the innocent in society. It had to uphold the law. But it also had a classified prime directive. And the classified prime directive was, this Robocop was made by an organization, and the 4th directive was that if something were to go wrong, you have to protect the organization, forget the remaining 3. Right? This was the prime directives by which this robo was built. Let me go on to one of my favorite authors, Asimov. Isaac Asimov had 3 laws of robotics. The first one was that a robo may not injure a human being or by doing nothing or through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. So a robo cannot injure a human being or allow a human to become injured. The second one was that it has to obey human beings at any cost, except if it contravenes with the first law. So if I tell a robot to injure him, the robot should refuse. It has to revert back to the first law. And the third law was the robot had to protect itself unless the first and second law came into force. Beautiful algorithm, right? But if you read the series of books that Asimov wrote, these laws evolved over a period of time. A robo then defined a 4th law. A robo defined the 4th law, saying the robo may not harm humanity or allow humanity to come to harm, and that became the 0th law. So suddenly it can harm human beings, it can disobey human beings, it can kill itself as long as humanity will not come into, will not be harmed. These are abstract concepts, right? And then it was further changed to say a robo will not knowingly injure a human being, but unknowingly can. Right? This is how laws evolve over a period of time. Isn't this how algorithms change over a period of time? By building in small, subtle differences. But there are inherent challenges. The first one is, what does it mean humans harming humanity? If global warming is harming humanity, should robots kill humans? Right? How do you choose between humans? How do you choose who's good, who's evil? How does a robo understand morality? Big concern. Will a robo become schizophrenic by worrying about unknowingly doing things which contravene its laws? I talked about knowingly doing, but if it unknowingly does something and realizes that it is the cause of that caused an issue, what will happen to its own algorithms? And finally, if a robo starts getting a superiority complex against humanity and believes it is superior, where do we go? And therefore, the first thought process is that while these laws are fallible, we still need laws. We have so many emerging technologies today, whether it's in the field of IoT or robotics and so on and so forth, but what are those technology constructs or architectural constructs that are going into them? Are there any principles? And do we need them? Do these need constant update, like I showed the 3 laws of robotics? Or are people in this room equipped to audit against those laws and come back and say that this is normal behavior and this is abnormal behavior, and therefore it has to be taken care of? And therefore, in a boardroom, the discussion has to revolve around what is the ethical construct for AI, for machine learning, machine behavior. How do you build monitoring systems which will tell us as organizations that things are going wrong? and build early warning systems. The final one, and I heard Bill Gates recently speak about it, is if we replace human beings with robotic process automation, does each of that robo pay tax? What is the moral code of conduct which those cyber employees will have? Moving on, this is a shoal of fish. And I wanted to bring this in to introduce a concept which is very, very similar to how AI really works. Each fish is an independent entity. They all think differently. They all have, their brains are not connected, but they act together. This is called swarm behavior, right? Nanoparticles, and that is again, I think Man spoke about nanotechnology as part of Industry 4.0. Nanoparticles are swarms because they collectively do something or have an industrial application or a biological application which will help humans in the manufacturing process or dealing with disease and so on and so forth. Michael Crichton wrote a book called Prey, in which a swarm of nanoparticles embedded with bacteria, which was supposed to be beneficial to human beings. The nanoparticles had AI and started mutating the bacteria in such a way that it would start harming human beings, right? And how do you protect against that? And I don't know how many of you have seen Minority Report, but Minority Report as a movie depended on three human beings who had cognitive powers who could look at the future, and they would submit a report of a crime which is going to happen in the future. Now, each one of them would submit a report, and if the three reports matched, it was sure that the crime is going to happen. And so, therefore, you could do a pre-arrest. If two of them got the event right, that was a majority report, and you could still do a pre-arrest. But what if the minority report of that one person is correct? Right? Again, if we build assumptions into how we believe automation will work, have we thought through of the consequences of going wrong? We know about false positives in the area of cybersecurity. That's something we deal with on an everyday basis. But what happens when automation has false positives? The last one, more esoteric. This is deep science fiction. Stephen Baxter, one of my favorite authors, wrote the Zeely series, in which he introduces this creature called the Photino bird. And the Photino bird is nothing but something which lives in the gravity wells of stars. These are nanoparticles again, have no brain. The only thing they know is that they have to eat the energy of the star till the star collapses. They don't know anything else in the universe. They don't know anything else exists. They only know stars exist. So they don't have any universal context in which they operate. And the more and more we employ machine learning, AI, automation, digital concepts in our work, how much do we believe that those technologies have the universal context of the organizations in which they serve? And therefore, can their action cause a larger reaction somewhere? And what is the risk thereof? And that comes back to my second construct. For a long time, and I grew up in KPMG for the last 17 years, for a long time, IT audit meant we don't do code review. We never did code review. Right? Code review was anathema. It was part of doing security review, but IT audit didn't mean code review. But are we sure anymore? Can we ignore that code is possibly the largest area that we need to audit even when we do business process audit or functional audits, and it's no longer sufficient to not do it? Are we sure that for every design principle that we write for every piece of automation, we get the expected output? Are we really sure that we know all the boundary conditions and the assumptions are all well tied together? And finally, how aware do you make the universal, or how big do you make the universal context when it comes to automation? Because finally, every digital platform can be bloatware as well. How big do you want it to be? It has to be efficient. And therefore, boards need to decide the threshold between need to know versus efficiency gains, degree of automation. It's very, very important. How many of you know what this is? Anyone? X-ray. This is the Death Star from Star Wars. And the reason I bring this up is this could blow up planets in the movie. And there are now 9 movies on this. The Death Star, if you had to kill the Death Star, you first had to cross a barrier, which was like an electrical field, very difficult to penetrate. And if you did, then there are fighter pilots coming up and trying to kill you off. You have to get into a low trench, fly halfway around the Death Star, get into a shaft, go halfway into the Death Star, and then blow up the energy systems for the Death Stars to collapse, right? And this is the USS Enterprise, which is from Star Wars. They also have defense of this kind. They have an energy field. If something happens to their main power, they have auxiliary power. If the life support systems are dying off, they can shift auxiliary power from their weapon systems to their life support systems. The point I'm coming to is defense in depth really does not change. And we still need it. And we need to, as organizations, continue to build alternate strategies so that we still keep building defense in depth. And therefore, the board should be evaluating at this point in time red team assessments, what are our cyber response strategies, what happens if something were to go wrong. And I completely agree with both my earlier speakers that we have to do enough from a prevention perspective, but also a response strategy is very, very important. We talked about autonomous cars. The question I have really from an autonomous car perspective is, again, an ethical question in terms of how does a car determine whether I can die or not? And how does it make that decision is very, very important. 2001, a Space Odyssey is about a spacecraft with an artificially intelligent computer called HAL. And if you just remove one letter each, it's actually IBM. HAL 9000 was the AI on this craft. And there were 2 spacemen in this spacecraft. They go towards Saturn because they see an anomaly in space. And during the course of the mission, the AI decides that these 2 human beings are actually interfering with the mission objectives and starts killing them off. Because it has got mission objectives which it has to adhere to. And it starts believing that the humans will not allow it to achieve it. Similar to a movie which my daughter sees, which is Wall-E, and there is an AI in this called Otto. And Otto's objective is that it takes human beings into space because Earth is no longer livable. And its directive is that day it detects that the Earth is livable again, bring back the humans. Till then, don't bring them back. But unfortunately, over a period of time, it only remembers the last part. So even when the Earth becomes livable, it doesn't allow them to come back. Right? So, and that's what can happen with half-programmed AI. I loved the previous session because there was also a little bit of questioning on CIA principles in the last session. So InfoSec was always about confidentiality, integrity, availability, and I want to postulate that possibly in the world of cyber, we want to add the element of human safety also. That it's no longer just about CIA, but what technology can do to us as human beings. And does human survival therefore mean stick to basics, defense in depth? Do I innovate? If I do, what do I need to think about? And boards need to question whether we have manual ability to override, have kill switches in technology. Very interestingly, recently when the British Airways systems went down, about 2 months back, there was this whole article about if this had happened 15 years back, both the front office and the back office would have come out into the main concourse, did manual processes, planes would have taken off, no problem. 10 years back, Jet Airways would have issued a handwritten boarding pass. Today, the back office didn't come out. They left the front agents to deal with increasingly unruly crowds because there's no way a manual override can happen today. And that much pervasive technology is today. And from a business continuity standpoint, do we really need to think? One organization I'm really, really proud of in our country is the AAI. If you go to air traffic control, every system goes down, they'll still land planes because they have manual backups for everything. We do need to think about this. Finally, we know what privacy is. I won't go into definitions, But I want to talk about this one concept. If anyone has seen the movie Interstellar, this is a wormhole. This is space bent around each other. A wormhole allows you to go from one point of space. This is Stephen Hawking. This is science, this is not fiction. From one point in space to the other point in space in an instant. Because you can bend space and connect those 2 points together. But it also allows you to do, in this book by Arthur C. Clarke, to do it in time. Which means that standing here, I can observe any point in the universe at any point of time in the past or future. If that were to happen, will privacy exist? And the question I have is, with the kind of pervasiveness of technology we have today, can privacy really exist? And if it does, and it needs to, how prepared do we need to be? I want to get into one more concept which we all hold very, very true. We talk about Aadhaar, biometric identification, so on and so forth. So let me give you 3 types of passwords. Iris scanner, demolition man, very easy, pluck out the eye. It will recognize you. This is a standard POS system all of us use on a daily basis. An iPhone filter, camera filter will tell you what the password is immediately after you use it. And by the relative degree of red that you see, you know the sequence in which it has been typed. And the last one, which is a very cheesy example, honestly, this is a movie which is best forgotten. But the whole theory in this movie was that this is a nuclear bomb which is going to go off. And the only way you could disengage it is by giving it a verbal password in the voice of the villain. And you have to say, Dulhan ki vidai ka waqt badalna hai. For some of us who don't understand Hindi, it roughly translates to the send-off for the bride. You need to change the time, right? So that's what it says. And the heroes of the movie make the villain say this in different parts, in different sentences, reconstruct it and play it to the bomb. And therefore the bomb doesn't burst. The point I'm trying to make is that we believe passwords of every kind, whether it's biometric, manual, written, spoken, we have voice authentication on banking systems. We believe this will not break. But all known core beliefs that we have, which drive our behavior on a daily basis about infallibility, about us feeling secure, are subject to change, either through scientific discovery or definitely criminal ingenuity. Right? So you have to learn to adapt to dramatic changes. And for the 42% CEOs who believe they are better at response, boards have to evaluate if complacency is creeping in. Because WannaCry happened just after the survey. I'll now go on to my panel. I would like to begin by asking Hari, Sethu, and Sai to give their perspectives in terms of what they believe from a cyber resilience perspective, what the future is holding for us. So Hari, if you can.
Hello. Okay. I'll just give our perspective from an organization. Our board is looking at this whole issue of cybersecurity and all the issues that we talked about. I will borrow the word that Venu used in the morning. It's about, not about if, but it's about when. So that level of consciousness is there today at the organization and the board level. So that's number one. There are 3 things I want to say. Like one, today how I put our organization maturity is, first you start with there is known knowns, then you have known unknowns, or you have unknown unknown. So maybe a few years back, we were an unknown in this space. That pretty much we didn't really understand what's going around us and what we have to do. So I think there we have moved from a state of known unknown today. I think we know that it's something imminent, and possibly we are finding ways how to address it, the internal threat and also the external threat. So maybe in the subsequent discussion, I want to talk about this internal threat and external threat, but after the other panelists speak about it. So whether can we move into a space of known, I'm really not very sure. That needs a maybe probably in years to come. I think maybe today we are in the maturity, how we're improving from known unknown. And there are two things as a board which we look at things. One, take care of your existing thing, what they talked about today. What are the issues from your network and server? So make sure that you take care of that, day-to-day operations, maintain that. So that is one thing which is, there is a high focus and priority. And then there is another, which is a long-term thinking, where today security as a domain has gained importance at the board level. So like you have different, we are a retailer, we are a Belgium headquartered retailer. So we have different domains like inventory management or point of sale that we used to focus on, but now security as a domain has gained a board level attention. It has to be followed as a domain, and it has to be a domain thinking. So so your day-to-day operations, your IT organization, they manage it. How do you keep your systems and process up and running? But that from a long-term perspective, the domain security is combined along with a domain called business analytics and intelligence. So it has been put that together, and then it is steered by CMD himself. So that gives the kind of focus that they have it. So how do you look at this from a long-term perspective? So how do you look at your internal threat? How do you look at your external threat? So how do you prepare your internal firewall, which is even more stronger than the external firewall that you have? So how do you look at that? So these are the different aspects today what we discuss at the board level. I think the conscious level is much higher and awareness is much high. And whether they talk about it every week, every month, no, but at least there is some good level of focus. So that's a big picture from a board level, how we look at this topic today.
Wonderful. Thanks. Sethu, if you...
Hello. Thanks, Vijay and Hari, for setting the context. I'll just take a few more extra minutes to share some perspectives. More so from my own experience of the last 6-7 years being the Chief Risk Officer of the company. Are the boards ready? I would tend to say, yes, they are ready. They have always been ready, right? And why is there a disconnect? Why is there a question? Are they ready? Are they ready? It is because we as security and risk professionals, we probably could not take the story in the right manner to the executives or to the boards. Having reported to the board last almost 5.5 years, I feel that in the initial stages, I was also having the same thing. Why are they not listening to me? Why are they not giving time to me? My briefing time in the whole board meeting of about 3 hours used to be just 15 minutes. And when I enter, the first thing one of the independent auditor will ask is, hey, anything other than the PPT that you have? Any highlights? If you have any important highlights, please cover it. But let me tell you, today, the last board briefing that I did about 10 days before, it was a 45-minute marathon briefing and exclusively 20-25 minutes only on cyber security preparedness. So it took time for me as a risk officer or as a security professional to cultivate the right story, to take the right things and present it in the right manner, right? And the key things that I discovered in my journey, I thought I will share, because that is what is going to benefit the entire community. The first thing I would like to share is that how much are we aligned to the business that we work with, right? So I just asked in my last team meeting about 4 days before, because we came up with our quarter results about 10 days before, after the board meeting. So I asked my team members, very senior guys, vice presidents, AVPs, senior managers, 20, 25 people. I asked, how many of you guys went through the results? Probably nobody had the guts to even raise their hands. Forget about say. So that is, what I keep telling them, that if we don't understand the business, we may not be able to understand what exactly are the pain points that they go through. And if we don't know what are the pain points they go through, we may not be able to understand exactly how I can help them, because all this cyber resiliency or the organizational resiliency that I manage within my organization as a CRO ultimately should enable the business to do business and succeed, grow, and add shareholder value. If this focus is there in all the work that we do, rather than put a blinker, I am a security guy, I am a network security guy, I am a this, I will be focused only on this and keep digging deeper and deeper without knowing how this is going to contribute to my business, probably it is going to have, it is not going to bring the desired result. This disconnect between the board and us will be always there. I'm not here to champion for the board or speak for the board, but let me also just think through, other than cyber risks that we are talking here, imagine the type of disruption risks that they manage. The predatory type of business, what you call, risks that they manage on a daily basis. If we see all those things, we should have an empathy. We should have that much empathy to understand what are the problems, what are the serious problems that the business is facing, and how can I go and help them, give them a soothing and comforting pitch, like what the earlier speaker said, the fear-mongering. That is something which no board member or senior executive would like to hear. Hey, you are non-compliant here, you are not this thing, you are exposed to this. These are the laundry list of serious risks. And what is the level of risk? When you do a priority, very surprisingly, they also say, all are high. 20 risks are there, 19 are high, only one is medium, and nothing is low. These are things practically I have seen, especially from the information security, my own team members, they used to present me, and I used to say, can you prioritize top five? No. Everything is important. Everything is high risk. If this happens, this can happen. So that is one important thing. I just want all of us to think, how much are we aligned, completely aligned to the business environment, business that we are in. That is one from my side. The second thing is, how did we manage to move, have a site, I don't know how many of us have a separate cyber security strategy in our organization. We have one today, and I feel very proud that we were able to roll out, because courtesy KPMG or PwC or others, we took their help. Because we were not able to convince, for whatever reason, that yeah, these investments were required, these are things which are required, but we were able to convince we need a third party to come and help us in benchmarking. And as we did the benchmarking and made the presentation, probably that helped the board to understand it in the right perspective. So the important thing that I want to convey is use the right levers. If you want to achieve something within the domain of security or risk, you need to use the right levers. The clients are there, people who are servicing clients. Use their focus, how, what is going to happen to the client delivery, how much it is going to impact. If that is one thing. Second is, no board is ready for a non-compliance issue. Use the compliance driver, use the client driver, and use your own reputation as a driver to drive what you want in terms of building the resiliency. The board is really looking for you as a security professional to help them ward up this. So how do we, answer this question? My organization, does it have the ability to foresee some problem, to adapt to the changes on a regular basis, to withstand an attack, and to recover and respond if there is going to be an attack? If these four important aspects are covered, when I think through, and I align my strategy with that of the business, probably we'll do a great job. I'll speak a little more later.
Thank you, Captain Sethu. So I think just taking a more business perspective, I think within financial services, cybersecurity has always been on the agenda, because more from a regulatory perspective, but also when you're handling clients, that becomes quite paramount. I think what has really changed is the pace of technology, and how clients are interacting with technology has meant that firms like ours have to really think at what does it mean in the future? How do we protect what we are obligated to protect? But also, how do we make sure that as a board, create new revenue opportunities? I think going back to Vijay's survey, I think the board really looks at technology disruption as definitely an opportunity, especially robotics and automation. But they see also that that's going to create a new set of threats that need to be actively managed. And that means that looking at new control frameworks on how those are actually managed. In addition to all of that, I think Captain Sethu briefly touched upon it. I think it's also about the culture of the organization. Are we able to see the threats that are emerging? Not the people just in this room, but I think we need a broader set of each one in the organization starting to think about, what am I seeing in my day-to-day interactions? Can that actually impact the organization I work with? And how do I make sure that we are better enabled to be prepared and respond to it? Because I think there is, as Donald Rumsfeld said, the unknown unknowns continue to evolve, because you can put a lot of controls around things that you know currently. And from that perspective, I think the board is ready. But the unknown unknowns are things that need to evolve, and I think collectively as a group, all of us need to help in that journey and making sure the board and our firms are really prepared for it.
So a common thread across all of these discussions, and I was thinking more from a board perspective, is there a need, therefore, that we have a very strong maturity framework around cyber and resilience, which is demonstrable, has KPIs around it, is something which a board can easily connect to at a business context level. And I really like the thought about using levers, including your own reputation. What is it that we in the room have to constantly evolve to protect our own reputations in the board? So any thoughts around those? Yeah.
So Vijay, actually there are, I extend this resilience not only to cyber, but overall business resilience. It starts with it can be a cyber resilience, or it could be your talent, or it could be your business. The resilience comes in different forms. So I think fundamentally it starts with what others also talked about, the organization culture. What is your immune system you are building in the organization? So I think we can bring in a lot of but having said that, I completely agree that from the long-term perspective, what I spoke about, I think you need to have a framework, like how you have a delivery framework, you need to have a security framework. It's very clear. So even in the other previous presentations, they have presented the good framework. How do you make sure you run your operations at the same time you're able to prevent things, how you detect and respond. So I think all those frameworks are of paramount importance, so there is no doubt about that. But the other aspect which the board today really wants to emphasize is on how do you bring in your organization culture to a level where we are resilient, not only in cyber, but in general, every resiliency. That's very important. And very specific to culture, it's like the word we commonly use about the trust. We always say trust, we start with the trust. I think trust is important. On the other side, you can't be naive as well, so how do you do that? So you don't be naive. So in a way, you put in your controls, balance, and checks behind the background, the system, to make sure things are running fine. But I think fundamentally, there should be a lot of focus on how do you build an organization which has the behavior and then the culture to identify these things that can actually you increase the awareness of the people. And just one example is what we did on this cyber resiliency. So we initiated a phishing mail we send it to all our management team. Just want to see how people react, because start with that. So out of 150 people we sent, we were surprised, or I don't know if surprised or not surprised, 60% of people, they opened and they responded to it, where it was a phishing mail, and management team did it. A lot of people from the board, from the senior management, they all did it. So we were not sure whether we should be happy that 40% didn't do it, or we should be worried 60% did it. So, but end of the day, this is a ways in which you can increase the awareness. How do you do that? And then bring in people to do some intrusion tests and see how well you are protected and everything. So these are different ways in which you try to look at it. So for me, the internal focus, internal threat is even higher than your external threat. The internal threat is nothing that you don't trust or believe in people. It's just your ignorance can increase the level of internal threat. How do you make sure that awareness more? So that can actually itself bring down a lot of your problems and issues that we have. So that's my take on your view, Vijay.
Hello. Sorry. So,
It's on.
okay. So, two perspectives here. One is, do we have a framework which is tested? Probably, I would put it this way, that when we did our strategy session and we developed our cyber security strategy, that is when I realized that from an intended strategy to that of an emergent strategy is what I should embrace. Not that I should be sticking around with one strategy which I develop and then I hard code it and then I start rigidly following. Gone are those days when that was success, that helped people to be successful. So, so that should answer your question. Today, the framework that we are talking should be something which is quite adaptable, quite helpful. I'm reminded of the basic masalas that are kept in a chart shop. You order anything, he chooses the right things and puts it and prepares and gives you the delicious chart that you want. Similar is the solutions or the preventive mechanisms or the risk mitigation processes that you have should be that you have the basic things ready, and as and when things change, as your threat vectors change, the threat landscape change, or the mechanisms and the processes should be in a position to adapt themselves, understand. Perhaps that is where the AI part and the data analytics part is becoming much more important. We struggle a lot today to bring that into the overall, planning exercise because it is too nascent. We are struggling, but we are very sure that we will be there. So that is one, Vijay, to answer your question in terms of how, from a framework perspective. Today, there are a lot of frameworks. And to answer your question, even the CIA framework is sufficient enough to address many of the problems. It is how you, see how much, he showed that light, right? Are you focused? Are you broad-based? So that is what is going to answer, right? And that depends upon the risk manager who is sitting or the security manager who is sitting and analyzing the, whole thing. The second thing is the reputation. You asked about the reputation. I just wanted to share a small anecdote with the audience. You said, did you mean our reputation?
Yes.
Yeah, very great. So I qualified that the reason is, it is about 4 years before, we had a lot of difficulty in getting the management attention, more so the management budget, right? Because there is always a pressure. The management has got a lot of pressure, right? Quarter after quarter, quarter after quarter. So investments are deferred, right? Especially in the security technology. Oh, nothing has happened, why should we? Nothing has happened, why should we? But a stage came, right, when, I strongly felt that we are in for a disaster. And that is when I walked up to my CEO, and I'm just sharing this. Not many of us will do. This is a maverick and a very risky technique. I'm not advocating, but this is what, when he said reputation, because I felt my reputation is at stake. Should something go wrong in this company because of a lack of cyber preparedness, it is the CRO who is going to carry the stigma for his whole life. So as a professional life, I am staking my 23 years or 24 years of my professional life for some inaction that is on the other side. So I walked up to my CEO and told him, this is what it is. Can I get the investment, or you please take this? That was my resignation, right? So I don't know whether I was correct or not, right? If you are doing this only for this, you should have told this 6 months before. So he called the CFO immediately and the CHRO, everybody. The RGC was formed. Everything happened, and in 6 months' time, I got almost about $2 million of investment. This is this thing that I'm sharing. So I'm not telling that we all should become like this. Perhaps in the present day situation, if I do, my CEO will be very happy to let me go, right? So, and yeah, seriously. But having said that, so that is the level of conviction we should have when we take our stories to the boardroom or to the CEO. That conviction we should have. Yes, I am contributing and I have done my homework, and if you don't do this, it is going to impair the organization in a very adverse manner. So that is something which I thought I'll share with you.
Thank you, Captain Sethu. So I think, just from my perspective on frameworks, I think for the board, it absolutely makes sense to have a framework that helps them to compare and contrast against others. But it's also important that it's more emerging, so that because the threat landscape continues to evolve, so it can't be a framework set in stone and then you keep comparing against it, because ultimately it's going to be pretty outdated. I guess in a financial services industry, the regulator kind of does that, because they tend to compare and contrast. You don't have these 5 things, so I want some remediation plan that I want to see within 6 months or 12 months, right? So there is a control mechanism, at least in regulated industries, but absolutely I think a common framework would definitely help. But just going back to some of the earlier points, ultimately I think a lot of it is around how you drive the culture of the organization to handle threats, right? Cyber resilience is as much about business and organization resilience, because there are so many things you can do, but ultimately you should have the ability to still execute and run the business for your clients, irrespective of what happens.
I have many unanswered questions, honestly, but in the interest of time, and I can see the ticker going by, maybe we can invite a question or two from the audience, and then we'll probably close the panel. You can either ask us collectively as a group or to someone in particular.
Hi, thanks for the insights. Quick question. You do very good risk management, nothing happens and nothing keeps happening, but you keep going back to the board and saying, hey, something can happen, something can happen. How do you keep going back to the board repeatedly and keep them convinced? Because you're managing risk well. All that investment is actually going into the right places. How do you keep going back again and again? And how do you keep them convinced that this is good and we need to continue to do it, especially when nothing happens in your own organization?
Good dilemma, because you would like to project yourself as good, that you are the best manager that they have ever had, so that your CTC or your merit increase, everything is taken care of. But at the same time, right, you have a job to do as a professional, right? So one of the important thing is that here is where the awareness part comes in play. So I wanted to share this, good that you asked. I have elevated awareness to a strategic level, right? When I say strategic level, I use that as an important strategy as any other technology or any other strategy, right, within my risk management. So the most important thing is, right, at all levels, I ensure that they are sensitized, they have the right, knowledge about what they need to know, right? So we go back, do an analysis year on year, quarter on quarter. We provide a status update of the threat landscape. Hey, here is where things have changed, right? Here are the new things that have emerged. While this time, like WannaCry was a solid case, WannaCry and post that the PETA thing, right? So we went back and said, hey, we have managed it, but we did a analysis and we found there are certain gaps which are there, right? So we would like that to be addressed. This gap has come because of certain changes in the environment or the sophistication of the technology of the attack. So like that, it depends, but there is a constant awareness and sensitization that I undertake to the members, whether it is the board or, the other categories of people.
If I were to add a couple of very quick points, someone did raise, I think Venu spoke about insurance. We keep paying a premium for life insurance, but that event happens only once, right? But that event, and it pays for itself at that point in time. So that's one analogy I thought I'll just quickly bring in. The second, of course, is that events like WannaCry keep happening, and that helps us all the time to keep boards convinced and in the game. And the third is the strategic context is so important. We, as professionals, enable our business to grow. We are not cutting away from their growth, right? If we are able to convince and bring that analogy very clearly in how we present what we do and the way we do it, then it's an easy sell, because if you are saying that because of this you're able to grow, if this didn't happen, this is the minus 10% of growth that will happen, it's a very easy sell. It's how business contextual you can bring it, and I think a lot of my colleagues spoke about it. It's very, very important.
Vijay, I just want to share this, maybe we don't have much time to... See, there is a compliance to a competitive advantage. Take this, I'm telling you how this by doing all these things, how you are going to provide an edge to the business guy to go and talk to their customers and win the deal. I'm telling you, half of your job will be done.
I know we are already at the end of time, so do find us around. We will be around during the day if you have other questions as well. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. May I now invite Shrikant to give away a small token of appreciation to the speakers, please. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next session of the day, we've got a panel discussion.